So as mentioned, my name's Jamie Height. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Ecree, former teacher, primarily in higher ed, though I've taught in K-12 across many different disciplines in the humanities. So I'm acutely aware of the challenges and the importance of how we teach writing to students, and recognizing the way those challenges sort of outpaced my ability to keep up with them as a teacher with a full teaching load, set out to provide a resource that can help teachers work with students in a more scalable and efficient way when it comes to teaching them how to write. So we'll talk about what we call the Virtual Writing Center for this Canvas Partner Day. And the acute awareness I always had as a teacher that I'm sure many of my fellow teachers on the call experience as well. If you're a parent, you may think about this. If you're an administrator, you may think about this. There's an underlying problem in education, and that's that students can't write. The skill that is going to serve them throughout their professional lives, throughout their college careers, throughout their high school careers, on their standardized tests, on their college applications, is one that on average they simply aren't developing to the level they need for success in the future. And that's the starting point that we at Ecree take, is how do we help students become better writers? How can we address this problem? So how do we address a problem at scale? Something I was always acutely aware of as a teacher is that I never had enough time. I wanted to help, but if I have 100 students in my purview, I don't have the opportunity to give most of them, much less all of them, the focused attention they need to build that skill. We don't have the ability to create extra time, so what do we do about this? And the underlying issue, of course, is it's about time. And the stat that has crystallized this issue for me is that for every hour that students work on a paper, I'm going to give them 37 seconds of my attention. There's a really strong disjunction there that underlies this bigger issue, and that's how do you handle a full roster of students who all need your attention at once. Yeah, but the simple disjunction is students do spend time working on these papers, and teachers don't kind of give a proportionally helpful amount of time to give students the feedback those students need on those papers. And it's not rocket science. Teachers only have so many hours in the day. What was shocking when we looked at this at scale was just how little time students are getting against how much time they're putting in. So 37 seconds for every hour spent, that's the data point that we need to improve. How do we address this issue? Especially because I know I can't create an extra 6 hours in the day. And most institutions I've ever been affiliated with have some version of the Writing Center. And then if that doesn't work, students will often seek out guidance from writing tutors. Right, so here's a resource for students, and in the online environment, it's often a collection of documentation and links and whatnot to help students kind of give self-feedback to address shortcomings in their writing. Tutors are more helpful on average in the sense that they're people who are providing those feedback loops, who are providing that teaching guidance. The problem with tutors, of course, if it's provided, or if tutoring services are provided in the course of a student's experience with an institution, we don't get around the scale problem. There's not enough tutors to go around. And even if tutors are not provided and students are paying for them, they can probably short circuit the supply problem, but obviously it's a cost. So it doesn't really chip away at the scale of the problem for most institutions. And as we sort of dug into thinking about this here at Ecree, two key problems kind of rise to the surface based on the typical resources that are provided to help students work on their writing. The first is for the writing centers that are often available through the Canvas classroom, it's a bunch of static resources. It's certainly better than nothing, but asking a student to go read the Purdue website on how to do any number of things about good academic writing, that's not the same as having a teacher guide the student through and provide those shorter feedback loops on those elements of good writing. And there's also a really practical point, and this is not always the case, but students are generally not working on their papers during normal business hours. They are working on them after writing centers tend to close. So if a student needs help at 10 o'clock at night and the writing center is not available to get live help, students will default to that static set of resources to try and troubleshoot their problems on their own. Again, better than nothing, but compared to the kind of focused attention they need from the teacher, we see a real gap that we want to address. And that's where Ecree comes in. And Ecree is a company that provides virtual writing assessment technology, which is the fancy technical term. What this means in the classroom is that we provide a virtual writing center that's staffed by an algorithm that provides a suite of benefits for students that can address a lot of these problems that humans in brick and mortar writing centers can't get around. One of the key ones for my teacher brain, probably the most important one, is that the feedback students can get on their writing is unlimited. There's no cap on how much help they can get, which is important when students obviously can come into a virtual writing center with varying degrees of need. Some students just need to address one specific thing. Others don't even know where to begin. Algorithms that drive our virtual writing center, they don't care about that. What they can do is provide students with as much help as the student needs. And the feedback is high quality stuff. This isn't extrapolated or vague, it's very much targeted. And I'll show that feedback live here in just a second for the curiosity that might be bubbling up to the surface. Just as important is providing unlimited feedback is making it easy to get to. And the Ecree Virtual Writing Center is entirely self-service. So students don't have to talk to somebody else to access this resource. It's literally a click in, they type in the question that they want help with, and that launches them into Ecree and they get that help immediately. So no need to schedule, no need to drive to Starbucks to meet with a tutor, no need to sift through 20 different links to find the resource that students really need. It's immediate. By virtue of technology being technology, it's available all the time. And again, I don't take phone calls at 3 a.m. when my students email me saying, can you help me fix my thesis statement? Technology doesn't turn off, right? So it's unlimited, it's immediate, and it's always available. All those things are available to as many students as your institution may need to help at any given moment. Again, through the power of technology, if 500 students need help with their American history paper right now, 500 students can get that high quality feedback right now. And why does this all matter at the end of the day? It works, meaning it's demonstrated again and again across disciplines, across institutional contexts, that students who use Ecree to get help on their writing improve measurably when it comes to their grades on their papers. And that leads directly to improved pass rates, better foundational skills, and all the things that we as educators really want to see happen in our students' skill set and student experience as they work on their writing. So I'm imagining a lot of folks are wondering, well, what exactly does this look like? Is this even possible? So what I'm going to show now is a brief screen capture of the technology actually working. And I'm very much expecting to head over and do a live demo after I've run through the slides. So this is just a teaser, and then I'm happy to get into a more detailed exploration of the student experience here in just a little bit. But what is going to go on here is the student is going to type in the essay that he or she is working on. And this is soccer a religion in our culture today? Click start. That opens up Ecree, and the student can start typing the essay from scratch while he or she is in Ecree. And after a couple of sentences, the algorithm will kick in. As soon as there's enough text for the algorithm to process, it will start providing feedback off to the side in a color-coded format. And the feedback, as you'll see here shortly, corresponds to basic elements of good writing, the things that we know and love from standard rubrics, different disciplines, standardized tests, AP exams, these sorts of things. The feedback is designed to give students that very clear indication about how they've done on those basic metrics of good writing. So is your length okay? Do you have background information? Do you have a thesis statement? And is your level of detail good, okay, or bad? And as I will be able to demonstrate to you when we go and do a bit more detailed exploration of the product here, students, by hovering over those traffic light elements, can get longer form textual feedback. So it isn't just, hey, your level of detail is not quite enough. The student can get guidance on that. So that guidance will identify the problem, explain what the thing, in this case, level of detail should be, and then guide the student on how he or she might address that problem. And that guidance doesn't, quote unquote, do the work for the student. Sort of pedagogically sound, questions that'll direct the student towards the right spot, but still require the student to get there him or herself. What does this mean in the context of a Canvas classroom? It means a button on your left-hand menu that students can click, and clicking that button would drop them right into the environment that I just showed you on the previous slide. So I'm working on that American history paper. I feel stuck, I need help. I'll click Virtual Writing Center and I go to Ecree, and I will get that feedback on my paper as much as I want until I feel satisfied and ready to turn it in. Again, designed to sort of fit within the environment that students and teachers know and not require a bunch of clicking around or extra steps from folks. We want to make it as easy as possible for students to get in and get that help. So I'm going to transition from what it is to what impact does it have. Very natural question to ask, and we get this a lot, so we like to just assume someone's going to ask it and provide the answers up front. What does it actually do? When students use Ecree, what's the outcome? And there's several outcomes. To highlight, our favorites are here on the slide. Pass rates improve in a market-leading capacity. We have a proven ability to get a lot of students across the finish line. So those students who need the most help, who are at most risk, benefit the most in terms of getting through that first course where they have to write a paper, and then sort of launching into subsequent completion of courses downstream from that first experience in a Canvas classroom. The average grade, and we measure by the grade of the paper either when it is uploaded as a draft or as soon as we have enough information to call it a draft if the student starts writing from scratch. The average improvement is almost a full letter grade, so 9 numeric points. Because that's an average, students at the lower end of the aptitude range, so your C students, your D students, and your F students are improving well more than 9 numeric points. So we're helping students pass overall, and we're also helping them get that confidence boost by getting a higher grade on their final paper. At risk or developmental learners, so those who are just on the edge of failing the course, they're showing an average improvement of 15 points per assignment. So not just helping everyone, but again, really giving a boost to those students who need it most. Students like it. Always an important question is, will they use it? And if they do, will they dismiss it? As students can be fickle when it comes to these sorts of things. We consistently see 80% plus of students on qualitative surveys say that Ecree is easy to use. It helps them feel more confident as writers. So it's not just something that works in terms of student outcomes. As a user experience, it's something that most students agree helps them along the way. This next bullet point, in many ways for my teacher brain, is the most important because it creates that time that I cannot provide. So the typical student per course will realize 10 hours of high quality engagement per class when using Ecree. So if the student has multiple classes where they're writing papers, that number is obviously going to go up. There's no way I could possibly provide an additional 10 hours of high quality engagement to any one student, much less every one of my students if I'm carrying a full load. So that's kind of that magic aha. Students can get something that approximates what the human instructor can provide, but the student can get it without the limitations that very much define teachers' time. 92% of students say that Ecree gives better feedback than their teachers. That's not because teachers don't like to give feedback. Again, this is a time issue from where I sit as a teacher myself. It's not that I don't want to. It's that if I have 100 papers to grade this weekend, there's only so much I can do because there's only so many hours in a day. And one of my favorites, again, kind of admitting what humans, just the realities of doing this job. the technology is immediate. I can't provide real-time feedback on every one of my students' papers. It's just impossible, whereas technology doesn't have that limitation. And that is important for helping students get that guidance right at the moment when they need it. So that sounds great from the kind of individual perspective. I'm going to transition into actual results from use in a quote unquote real learning environment. And what Ecree did for this study was we looked at 2 of the academic institutions in the UNC system, UNC Chapel Hill, then North Carolina Central University, roughly 20 miles apart. And we gave at UNC Chapel Hill, it was a philosophy instructor, and at NC Central, it was an introduction to anthropology course. And what we did was we provided the professors of those courses with access to Ecree, and we tracked the percentage of students who are going to improve when they use Ecree, those number of extra hours of engagement that Ecree can provide, and then a final thing for the teachers is, well, how much time is this actually saving me kind of over an entire class of students. Methodologically, just as a clarification, we normalized these figures to per 100 students, and that's because in UNC Chapel Hill, there were more students in that intro to philosophy class than there were in the anthropology class, so we wanted to take the statistics in each course and then normalize them to a per 100 students so we could compare apples to apples as much as possible. And the data, as you see on the screen, shows very strong improvement. Almost everyone at Chapel Hill improved while using Ecree, and literally every student in Central's Intro to Anthropology course who opted to use Ecree saw an improvement in their grades. Per 100 students, significant amount of time. When I shared these figures with the respective professors, they sort of laughed and said, yeah, I can't come up with an extra 250 hours of time per course if I'm teaching 3 courses a term. So again, it creates time. It provides that quality feedback in a way that teachers simply aren't able to do because teachers don't have the ability to create more hours in the day. And it's not just that students are getting more high quality feedback on their papers, it's that teachers have 0 additional hours spent grading all that extra work that students are doing. And this is, for teachers in some ways, the more interesting statistic, right, is it's not just that students get more help, it's that that help would have cost me another 250 hours of time to complete the grading work. So again, benefiting both of the crucial stakeholders in the classroom environment. The teacher and the student both get something that isn't possible without technology. For the administrators on the call, this is our attempt to quantify that data that we showed on the previous slide. In the methodology here, this is an airtight math, so it could vary slightly, but the idea is you count up the number of hours of value provided, so extra hours of engagement plus hours of grading saved, find the average hourly wage for the likely teacher of that course and multiply. And those are the figures that are in front of you. For those respective institutions, based on the number of hours of value provided, Ecree was able to generate that level of return per 100 students. So what does that mean if you are interested in using this in your own institution, in your own campus classroom? The business model is pretty straightforward. We provide annual site-wide Ecree licenses that are based on the number of FTEs. I'm happy to have follow-up conversations with anybody who wants to dig into this slide specifically. It's meant as a general indication of how we price because we are anticipating folks are coming in from institutions of all different sizes. So I don't want to get bogged down in teasing out, well, over here it would be X, over here it would be Y. We're more than happy to have follow-on conversations regarding what does volume mean in terms of pricing those licenses. So that's kind of the end of my formal slide presentation. Again, please feel free to reach out to me at any point if you want. You can find us in all the typical social media channels, both our company page, and if you want to look me up, I don't tweet all that often against company tweets, but if you want to follow me, that's also great. Find me on LinkedIn.